Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience.
If I had to describe Manly's 2025 season in one word, it just has to be chaotic. You start off by fumbling a 15-year club legend, and then you jump on NRO 360 and deliver the most desperate public proposal since I started watching maths back in 2015. Look, we beat the Premiers 13+, we beat the minor Premiers 13+, we beat Melbourne, we beat Penrith, we beat the big dogs. And then, you know what, we'll just go and lose to the Wooden Spooners, the Newcastle Knights, and the runners-up for the Wooden Spoon, the Gold Coast Titans, in consecutive weeks. What did we do after that? Anthony Seibold decided that he was going to hold a 7-minute meeting with each player in the top 30 to figure out what was going wrong. That's not an interview, that's speed dating. Look, it was great for those that don't support Manly. It would have provided a lot of entertainment, but as a Manly supporter, chaos, man. Chaos.
Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League and all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. We're going to be talking about the Manly Seagulls today on the podcast. Interesting year for Manly. It's sort of been a bit of an up and down season for them. There was a lot of injuries throughout the year. I think the big thing is their board, more so than their playing structure. It was more so the board for me that I think let down the Manly Seagulls at the contract negotiations, the whole DCE saga at the start of the year, Tom Trbojevic contract negotiations, Reuben Garrick now seeking an exit from the club as well for that 2027 season. The contract negotiations have been handled really poorly in season 2025, and I think that was probably the big thing over everything else at the Manly Seagulls and all the other dramas there that I think overshadowed everything, especially that DCE move. I think people are still talking about it now and the effect it's going to have on the Roosters and Hugo Savala and whatnot. Discussion for another podcast. We've already talked about it on another podcast for the audio version, Spotify, Apple. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe. But we're still talking about it now, and the rumors of the exit from Manly and all of the rumors around the Roosters. That's a full year ago that conversation started, and we're still talking about it today. So. That's obviously the big thing that I think's overshadowed Manly's season, DCE, but also the contract negotiations that I've had, and obviously now Tony Mestrov, his exit, and obviously bringing in Kingy as the CEO as well. That's going to be very interesting to sort of keep an eye on, and if they can mend those relationships that they really have managed poorly with Turbo. With Garrick, I think Garrick's going to be the big one we watch out for if he does leave the Manly Seagulls. If he stays, what the go is with that. But that's obviously going to be the big one to watch at Manly. I guess taking a little bit of a glimpse into next year, they do lose a couple of guys. Unfortunately, Josh Aloiai had to medically retire due to an injury, I think, in his scapula. I think it was something to do with the shoulder. Had back-to-back blows at the scapula and then had to obviously medically retire from that. It just got too many hits. And I think he said on a podcast somewhere that if he was to make another bad tackle again, that would have ended his career and done permanent damage to his shoulder. So, wish him all the best, and obviously his next venture as well. They did also lose Jakey Arthur to Hull. Michael Cheekham has retired. Wow, there you go. Atasi James, he's been released, so the front row there being released from Manly. They've also lost Dean Madison to the Super League, Ryan Madison's brother. They lost Chris Patolo to Huddersfield, so that's another forward. Toast Sipley's gone to Warrington, and then Jez Savunga is going to Wakefield Trinity. So it was sort of already a bit of a concern for them this year, just their strength in their pack, but they've just lost about 4 or 5 middles there already, and they only just re-signed Siwa Takiaho. That was sort of looming as to if they were going to re-sign him for a further season. It looks like they have now, which is great news. But their middles is a real concern. It was a concern this year. They just really didn't have the strength in the pack, and Paseka went down, and that was pretty much their season and finals run done because they just didn't have that animal in the pack. They had guys like Bullymore who were outstanding, and Nathan Brown, these impact guys off the bench. They just really didn't have that alpha to put them on, put Manly on their back and say, come with me and lead the side. So that was probably a thing that I sort of noticed with the Manly Seagulls. They didn't really have the alpha through the middle of the pack. And, Paseka, he's struggled to be that guy when he's been in the team too. And it's not through a lack of effort. He's a great front rower, and he has been for Manly for a little while. But it's just taking that next step, looking at the size of him, the frame of him, and then using that to his advantage, and knowing that he is the alpha in this team, that he is the star front rower in this pack, and just taking Manly with him. That's obviously going to be big to watch. I think last year could have been his breakout year had he not had that season-ending injury, or almost season-ending injury. He came back at the back end there. But yeah, I think that's obviously going to be the watch for next year too, is Paseka, and just how he responds to obviously being out for this season, and obviously taking that with a little bit of a chip on the shoulder for next year, and really being the alpha in this pack. That's going to be big for Manly, because they are missing that leader through the middle of the field, and they've lost a lot of depth in the middle now as well. Even young guys like your Bartolos, who I thought was going to be a guy that sort of pushed his way through and got into this 17. It just wasn't meant to be. LIA was in and out of first grade. Atasi James was going to be one of those guys that was going to play for them quite a bit. Dean Madison was good depth in the halves and in the back row. Toast Sipley was a guy that was consistently in first grade there. They do lose quite a bit in the pack already, even though their pack at the moment isn't as great. They do lose a lot of depth in the 9 position as well, and there's a lot of noise around Lachlan Croker, and obviously what he's going to do for next year, if he's going to retire medically due to concussion, if he's going to play on. That chat sort of quieted down a little bit, but I did hear a little bit of word that if Lachlan Croker does medically retire, that they're going to go and try and get Sam Verrills an early release from the Titans for him to go over and play for Manly. And then that was almost going to be a done thing. That'd be an interesting watch for me if that does occur. Other than that, it's really only Jake Simkin at the club now who's a 9 option. Jazz Tavanga's left, Gordon Chancum-Tong's left. They've pretty much lost all their depth at 9, so it's literally just Jake Simkin at the moment, just off my basic knowledge of the squad, which is a little bit concerning, obviously, very, very concerning, and keen to sort of see what Manly decide to do there as well. It really does depend on the fitness of Lachlan Croker, and he's in my predicted side at the moment, but with him out of the side, it is, as I said, really only Jake Simkin as the depth. And even for me, Jake Simkin is a real good backup 9 for me. I don't know if he is an out-and-out first grade starting hooker. Yet to sort of see that from him yet. He's a good player, and he does very well for them off the bench. He's a real good bench option, just livens up the attack a little bit. But whether he's a starting 80-minute hooker, I'm not too sure. So I think Sam Verrills coming in would be a great option for them. And the Titans, they've got Luke Summerton. They're pretty much set for 9s. They've got a bunch of young 9s that they've just bought as well. From different clubs. I think a few from Penrith and whatnot. So they're sorted for hookers over there for the future. Maybe Sam Verrills is a good investment for the Manly Seagulls. It's certainly something that I'd be considering, depending on the whole Lachlan Croker situation and if he is good to play or not. Look, I guess we've got to move back into the season review, because that's the point of this podcast, right? We're reviewing the season of the Manly Seagulls for 2025, not previewing for 2026. One of the big things that stood out to me is Jake Trbojevic. I think he is slowing down a little bit. I think that, as good as he is and as good of a leader as he is and a cultural guy in that Manly Seagulls sheds, I just don't think he is the 13 for the Manly Seagulls. I think you're probably going to move him into the front row, and I think that they're probably going to have to do that regardless, just with the strength of their pack at the moment. They just need a front rower that can play decent minutes there. I think that can be Gerbo. In saying that, I don't want him to be a battering ram. We've seen that before back in 2023. I don't really want to see that again for the Manly Seagulls. But in saying that, I think he's just at that stage of his career where he needs to get out of that 13 jersey. He's got good hands. Front rowers generally have good hands in the competition these days as well. Playing, I reckon, max 45 minutes a game in the front row is probably what we're going to see from Gerbo moving forward, especially with the purchase of Kobe Hetherington there through the middle. I think that he'll go straight to 13, and then you'll see Kobe Hetherington take that 13 jersey, Gerbo into the front row. That's probably the way that I would go anyway at the moment, and it suits their pack better. I mean, we were saying it at the start of this season that's just passed as well in the preview that Tavanga was, supposed to be the 13. Jazz Gerbo needed to move into the front row and progress into the front row because he was slowing down even at that stage. And we're sort of getting to the back end of the season now and, saying the same thing. So I think going into next year, that's probably going to be the move for them. That was certainly something that I noticed from this year. Tom Trbojevic still getting injured. Wasn't as bad this year. Obviously, I think he got through at least 15 plus games this year. Tom Trbojevic, the quality of those games was up and down. There were still some injuries that you could see were really hindering him, especially around the Origin period. He looked like he was pretty banged up. But yeah, I think Tom Trbojevic, is there a consideration maybe of moving him into the centres? You got Lehi there, who's probably the future at fullback. Very, very good fullback. Whenever he seems to fill in there, he does a very, very good job. Do you still consider Turbo into the centres? I'm not too sure. I mean, Turbo can still get through plenty of work in that sort of role. And we sort of saw it trialled for a little bit there, but didn't really last too long. I didn't mind it, really, because Tom, when they were getting in good attacking ball, Tom would just roam, and we see Critter do it for the Bulldogs. We can probably see Latrell Mitchell doing it for the South Sydney Rabbitohs going into next year. I think we can definitely see a world where Lehi is the fullback, Turbo plays right centre, but in attacking ball, Lehi can move into a centre position like Connor Tracy does for the Dogs, and you can see Tom Trbojevic roaming in that attacking ball. But I just think that you've got to limit his involvement a little bit, especially from those play 1 and 2 carries, which can take a lot out of you. It's basically like running off the back fence a lot of the time, especially with the kick chase of some of these aggressive teams. I think that just taking that sort of load, not so much of a workload, because he's probably still going to get through a pretty similar amount of work, and even more so with the defensive load, playing in that right centre position, one of the harder positions to defend in. But more so the, those back fence almost carries on those play 1 and 2 carries on the last tackle, and you're retrieving the ball and getting it, getting as many meters as you possibly can. Just getting that sort of load off him, I think is going to be pretty good, to be honest. I think, especially with those soft tissue injuries, I think that's probably going to pay dividends for him. Lehi, speaking of Lehi, breakout season for him. Really, really good season for Lehi Apawade. As I said, really good games at fullback throughout the year when Turbo was injured, and even when he was on the wing, he was still getting 250 odd meters a game, and breaking tackles, defending well, scoring tries, just his toughness at the line as well. Barging over people with his size. He's a gun, and as I said, he's going to be the future of this club somehow, whether it's in the wing position, whether it's a fullback, wherever you want to fit Lehi Apawade into this team, he's going to be the future of this side. And it was a breakout year this year for him, not so much for Tonga, but I thought that, for Manly, he was unbelievable. And as I said, I can definitely see a world. It's probably not the world that I think Seabold will go down next year, but I think there is still a slight chance. I'd almost argue that it's 25-75, 25% chance you maybe see Lehi start the year at fullback with Turbo at right centre, and then Turbo roaming in good ball. 75%, they're just going to go the normal way of Lehi on the wing and Turbo at fullback. But I still think there's a slight chance there that we see Lehi start the season next year at fullback for the Manly Seagulls. Another guy that I thought had a real strong year was Tolu Koula. Really, really good year for Tolu Koula. I loved the footy that we saw from him in season 2025. Just a real turnaround, because 2024, I'd argue the back end of 2023 wasn't the best from Tolu Koula, and the back end of 2024 we sort of saw glimpses, and there was a game against the Dogs in particular where he sort of really found his form there. But this year in particular, he was outstanding for a lot more consistent than previous seasons as well. We were talking about back in 2022 when I was on BTFU back at the start with Gavin Sheehan about Tolu Koula and how he's going to be an Origin player in the future. I still think there's a chance for him. I really do. I think that if they do want to revamp the side a little bit going into next year, and he has some really good games played, and Lomax is obviously gone now. He's gone to rugby, most likely. I think there is definitely a world where we see Tolu Koula as a bit of a smoky around guys like Kiraz and others to grab that right wing spot. I think it's definitely a watch for next year. I think that he will definitely be a guy that if he can, get higher than the heights that we saw in 2025, maybe he's a bit of a smoky for the New South Wales Blues going into next year. Big call, but I really liked what I saw from him in season 2025. Even Hamole, other than the injury to the shoulder at the back end, his start to season was solid. Had some really good games there for Manly. You could argue that there was a little bit of a consistency issue. I'm doing the 6-7 too much. Got to stop moving my hands. You could have to argue that there was a little bit of inconsistency there for for Hamole Olakau'atu. I'll throw myself off here a little bit. Get back on track. Hamole Olakau'atu, definitely could argue there was a bit of inconsistency there, but I thought that for the most part, he had a real strong season. The injuries at the back end of the year sort of hurt him a little bit and threw him off a little bit, but all in all, I thought it was a strong season from Hamole, and hopefully an injury-free season next year sees him get recalled into the Origin conversation as well in that right back row position. You've then, as I said, Paseka, we sort of already talked about it, just finding himself again and getting that confidence through the middle of the field. It sort of looked like he had it too in that trial match before he had that injury, but just needing to find that level of confidence in his body and knowing that he's the alpha in this pack, I think is going to be the big thing for him, especially in what is now a pretty light on depth pack. He's definitely going to have to stand up a little bit next year. And then I guess the last thing for me is two guys, Ethan Bullimore and Nathan Brown. Ethan Bullimore, unbelievable breakout season from Ethan Bullimore. If he was a rookie, he'd be in line for Rookie of the Year. He was outstanding this season, Ethan Bullimore, through the middle of the field, especially, again, a lighter pack with Paseka out with injury for most of the time. He'd come off the bench, not generally a middle forward, but he'd come on through the middle, and he'd just go ham. The extra leg speed, the quick play of the balls, the toughness that he had there, he'd be getting 150 to 200 metres a game off the bench for the Manly Sea Eagles, just with hard, tough carries, quick play of the balls, finding your front. He was phenomenal. And then just not so much the impact through the middle and meters and whatnot, completely different, more of a Leota sort of impact from a Nathan Brown with just the toughness and the aggression and trying to be that alpha off the bench or trying to be the dickhead off the bench through the middle of the field that's going to cause a bit of angst, going hard, but getting angry there through the middle. Those back fence carries we love to see from Nathan Brown. I saw a couple of them in 2025. That is going to be interesting going into next year because Nathan Brown's reportedly going to the Tigers with the whole Dave Fafita signing. It sounds like it's going to be a bit of a shockwave of we'll see Dave Moali go to the Manly Sea Eagles a year early, which would be great for them next year. And then you'll see Nathan Brown go to the Tigers, it looks like. So that's going to be an interesting watch over the next couple of weeks. By the time this podcast comes out, that move might have already happened. But yeah, I mean, those guys this year, outstanding. Really, really solid impact off the bench. That's pretty much it for the Manly guys. If there's anything I missed, let me know in the comment section below. Would love to hear your thoughts on their season. We are going to get a couple more of these out. I think there's about another 5 to go. I think the Bulldogs will most likely be next, but just keep an eye out. Doing these twice a week now as well, so you're getting plenty of content. You've had plenty of content for the past couple of months on Big LEZ'S League, so if you love that content, you want to see some more, subscribe to the YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, get stuck into it all. We'll see you guys in the next one.